Should we
All
play our
right.
intro?
Oh, yes, I am so ready.
No, you're not.
What?
He thinks he's ready. He's not.
Hello, and welcome back to another new episode of Ramblers Rising. I'm your host, Richard.
And I'm your other host, Aaron. And today we're going to be going over chapters 16 through 19 of Red Rising. These are some good chapters.
Hell yeah, they are. This is going to take us to the end of part 2.
Oh, really? This is right up to the end of part 2. We're making good progress.
Yeah, it's not my favorite part of the book, but that's all right. You know, we get some big things happening though. Darrow becomes a gold. The thing that happens at the end of this part is kind of fire. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah. We get to learn a little bit more about the Peerless Scarred as well, which is really interesting. Get some good lore drops in this set of chapters.
Yeah, Nero does not stop yapping about how amazing the Peerless Scarred are. He really,
I mean, let's be honest. Nero Augustus is always glazing the golds.
yeah, but not like I glaze Cassius. So, I mean,
That
he's not
that
even
much is true.
dedicated. You have no idea. I would glaze Cassius so much more if you knew about his later stuff.
Well, looks
Uh,
like we got to get through this book and then halfway through Golden Sun for me to finally understand.
looks like we gotta get through fucking Dark Age to understand, buddy.
Oh, oh, yikes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, idiot.
Yeah. Richard, what have you been up to lately?
Terrifier 3.
That's a wonderful combo. I mean,
Yeah.
not
What
quite,
about
but you know,
Well, Terrifier was fucking disgusting, but if you're into horror and gory, nasty shit, highly recommend.
yeah. Um, Personally, I don't know if I'll be watching that. I'm I'm like sort of a horror enjoyer. I wouldn't say I'm a fan though. Like every once in a while I'll watch a horror movie and enjoy it, but the
Yeah,
whole
you should
slasher
watch
flick thing,
Hereditary.
I I've seen Hereditary and
No
I
way,
know that
so have
you've also
I.
seen Hereditary.
Oh my god, the lower.
Yeah. Um so with this set of chapters, how do we start off here? What do we want to jump into first?
You mom. We're gonna jump into chapter 16, the Institute. Ooh, this. Not gonna lie, some of the information in these chapters kind of a little more than we need, and I was kind of fumbling for what to even put in this outline, but
That's all right. We can always this can be a little bit of a shorter like wrap up episode for the part then if
yeah.
just because there really is like less content in these few chapters.
Yeah, we definitely get like some character introductions, but that's about it. In this, we do find out though, Darrow he gets his test results, and they go through like this really long questionnaire and like vetting process to make sure he didn't cheat because my boy Darrow only missed one question out of a couple hundred.
Yeah, I love the idea that they're like, oh, this motherfucker, he's so good at this, we need to check if he's cheating. Because I don't think that they do that for anyone else. No one else performs well enough that they feel the need to examine them that closely.
I think they did it for like a couple other people, but yeah, it's very rare that it's like this. I mean, Darrow actually gets a little award for, once he gets into the institute, he gets an award for being so smart and awesome and goaded.
Yeah. And before sending Darrow straight into the belly of the beast and essentially throwing him into the deep end, the Sons of Ares give him a Pegasus necklace. And it opens up when he says Ao's name, and he chooses to put the Hymanthus petal in it that he brought with him from his hometown.
Yeah, it is kind of like a cute little memento, and it's nice that he always will have that with him.
Yeah, I agree. I think that having a little piece of AO with him is really it's a good reminder for him. I like we said a few times in the past few episodes, having those reminders of where he came from, it's going to be so important for him to hold on to, I guess, his humanity, not just like his heritage as a red, but holding on to what makes him different from the other golds now that he's physically the same.
Yeah, and we do definitely see in this batch of chapters he starts to kind of like drift into the gold mindset here and there. I mean, we'll obviously talk more on that later, but it's very interesting that he really does drift into it. Like he starts calling people pixies, he starts feeling the need to humiliate people, all that crap.
Yeah, the power goes to his head a little bit, doesn't it?
I mean, shit, if I looked like Darrow Olekos, sorry, Andromedus, I would have the power going all to my head. It'd be crazy.
Yeah, because what, he's like 8 feet tall, just pure muscle. Like he's definitely there's a reason why the golds have a bit of a superiority complex. The power goes to their head just a little bit, I would say.
No, really? They would never.
Yeah,
People in power would never abuse it. That's never
no,
happened before.
absolutely not. And we get an introduction to a really important character that sticks with us through the entire series, Julian,
Yes,
a young.
Julian. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just
That's my
gonna
bad.
say that he's a young gold, and a relative of another character that we're gonna meet in a little bit, and they talk, they bond a little bit. He's kind of a smaller kid, right?
Yeah, he's smaller. He really does glaze his brother. I can't blame him. But yeah, he's a smaller kid, and he really does look up to his older brother. Uh, that's kind of like the focus of not the focus of their conversation, but they talk a lot about his older brother without giving away his name.
Hmm. Yeah. Um, we get another really important character introduction.
Oh my god, I love this guy. I know you
One of
do
my
too.
Yeah, he's one of my favorite characters. A small kid with some anger issues shows up and he insults Darrow and Julian immediately. And this kid is named Severo. He has the nickname Goblin. I'm not sure.
Cuz
Does he have the nickname yet?
he's no, he gets it like first day in the institute, so in like 4 chapters. But I mean, he's called a goblin because he's a fucking small kid and his temper, and also he has some goblin habits.
Yeah, he definitely does. But he's such an amazing character. Uh, he definitely is top three for me. I love this guy. Um,
Yeah, he's 5. I'd say he's 5, and then Mustang, my beloved, gets fourth,
yeah,
and then you know my top 3. My top 3 is goaded.
I do. And Goblin slash Severo gives them a little bit of lore dump, telling about the passage, which is an important test in the Institute. Richard, what does Severo tell them about this passage?
Honestly, kind of nothing. He really just tells them that it's an important part of the institute and that it kind of like culls off the weaker kids, but we don't actually know how or anything. We don't really know what happens in the passage. We just know that it exists and that it's very scary
Yeah.
sounding.
Um, and then Nero Augustus, the Arch Governor of Mars, gives a little speech to the Institute kids, and he talks about the importance of the scar and explains that those with it are without equal, or peerless.
Peerless. Oh my god, he
Yep.
said the thing, guys.
um, do you have anything else to add to that? I feel like it's the speech is a pretty big part of this chapter.
Yeah, it's a solid like 2 pages, I want to say. He like it's really just talking about like discrimination against the low colors is based, even though it's actually not. He's
Hmm.
lying. And how the might of gold, blah 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 blah, were amazing. And you guys aren't any pixie whelps. I think I remember that exact phrasing.
Yeah, it's once again showing us that Nero Augustus and the Golds in power are just they're ruthless and they want to instill that in the new generation. So And you already see Darrow kind of adopting that mindset. Like you mentioned earlier, that Darrow is kind of leaning into the whole pixie thing and going on a bit of a power trip. And it's just, I think that it rubs off on them very quickly. I also think it's interesting that the Arch Governor of Mars would show up to the Institute himself.
But yeah, there's and this is like some lore that we get later, but it's not. I wouldn't consider it spoilers. It's just world building. There's only one institute on each planet, so that's like the most important, and that's obviously the most important like school for the Golds. So that's why I think he technically runs it. Um, I don't know that much about the like bureaucracy lore though.
Mhm. Yeah, it's kind of an interesting idea that, in addition to his position as a governor, that he's also kind of the head of the school leading the next generation of Martian Golds.
Yeah,
Um, so the kind of dual importance of raising a new generation to be ruthless while also ruling is, I think it's interesting. He's kind of a mentor in some capacity to all of these kids.
yeah, and we definitely will see that later on. But next up in his speech, he also mentions Persephone, who is the red girl who sang the silly song and then got murdered for it. I think this is the first mention of her. I'm not gonna lie, I might have missed it last week, but I think that's it. So she's becoming like this ethereal. I don't know what word I'm looking for. I'm kind of fumbling right now. I'm not gonna lie.
Like almost like saint like, or a martyr for the cause, I guess.
Yes, that's what I meant.
Yeah. And Nero does end his speech by saying that he will scar them, but they gotta fucking earn it. He doesn't use those
Yeah.
exact words, but
Well,
same.
yeah, but close enough. He's like, "You will be scarred by my sword, but first you must earn it." Ooh.
Yeah. Which I think is another interesting part of the whole ritual of becoming a peerless Scard, is that as the head of the Institute and the Arch Governor of Mars, he is the one who does it himself, which is, it's very cool.
Yeah, and I also think it's interesting that they get it on their face. Like everyone gets it on their cheekbone. It's
Hmm.
a very like I get that it's supposed to be like very out there because it's status and that's the gold's whole thing, but it's just kind of crazy.
It is. It's another one of those pieces of this society that has some kind of religious or culty like undertones, where there's this whole process of getting a scar on your face after going through all of these trials and tribulations to become a top member of the society. And the whole process of going from being a gold to becoming a peerless guard is, it feels very ceremonial. And I don't know, I feel like I always kind of look at things through kind of a spiritual or religious lens a little bit, even though I'm not very religious. But I just find traditions and religious ceremonies really interesting. So I see a lot of allusions to that in the way that the golds operate.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, they're with you. That's why I think because he does Pierce does a really good job with building on those themes. I'm excited for whatever he does next after Red Rising. He said fantasy, like high or dark fantasy, and that's going to be fire.
That is, yeah, I gotta read that whenever he gets around to writing it, because I can just imagine the world building that he would put into a fantasy book, and it gets me excited.
Oh, you like world building and fantasy? You know what you should do? Read the Cosmere stuff, bro.
I'll read Cosmere when you read Game of Thrones.
I will read Game of Thrones when I'm done with Cosmere. I've got like 15 more books, so
Yeah. Or watch House of the Dragon.
too hard.
Wow. Okay. I see
I
how it
don't
is.
even, bro. I don't even have HBO. It actually is too hard.
You can have my login, motherfucker.
Oh my god, free stuff. Let's go.
Free stuff. Let me just read out my password on the air.
Yeah. Okay.
ABC.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, shut up.
Oh, that's it. Okay. Fuck you.
And do you have anything else to add to chapter 16 before we move on to the next one?
Not really. Nero just likes to yap. I mean, he could be a rambler if he wasn't such a prideful son of a bitch.
Yeah, I mean, we wouldn't fuck with him for other reasons, but he could be the fourth Rambler in another life.
I mean, at this point, he can just take Chase's place. Fuck that guy. He beat me in Dragon Ball last night, and that hurt.
He beat me in Crusader Kings last night too.
Sounds like we're in agreement then. Let's get this
Yep,
guy out of here.
exactly. And let's move on to chapter 17, the draft. Richard, how does this chapter start off?
Starts off with the House Apollo like representative, the proctor, coming up to him and saying, like, asking if he wants preference to Apollo, given that that's like the house that his family, his fake family, anyways, has been in, and he says no, and I don't remember the wording, but the comment he makes is really cocky, and that's just showing us more of like that transformation into a gold, not just physically, but now more socially.
Yeah. Now, do you think that Darrow is really adopting these traits as part of his personality, or is it still mostly an act that has kind of been instilled in him by characters like Mickey and the other people who trained him on how to be a gold?
So at this point, it does seem like an act. In chapter 19, though, we get his internal thoughts on some stuff, and we know that it's not an act. Not fully, at least. But obviously, we'll have to get there in a little bit. Stop jumping ahead, bro. Come on. Calm down.
Oh my goodness. All right. Um, that's really interesting to me that he's just so fucking cocky. And I also like that he denies the whole House Apollo thing. It really does show that he's not trying too hard to fit into it to where it would become suspicious. Like he's playing his role and he's playing it well, but he's not kind of overdoing it and being overzealous about being a part of his fake family's legacy.
Yeah, he's more. Well, like, I think if I remember correctly, the exchange was like they were talking about the test, and he said, the proctor says, like, what do you think of your test results? And he says they speak for themselves. And the proctor's like, well, I asked you to speak for them. And he said, I think he said, like, I took a piss on your test, which is true. He did kind of slay.
Yeah, he took the piss out of it,
He
as
really
the
did.
British would say.
As the British, you mean the gold brows would say.
Exactly. And the House Mars Proctor decides to approach Darrow. This is when they have a fun little exchange, and the Proctor punches him
Yeah,
and tells him he can't punch back. And what does Darrow do, being the outside the box thinker that he is?
he fucking kicks him in the shins. I love Darrow. He's so silly.
It's so perfect. I absolutely I love when he does shit like this because Darrow it, Pierce Brown really has a good way of incorporating some comedic stuff into these books, and a lot of it just revolves around Darrow sort of bending the rules or operating outside of ways that you would typically think. So I really appreciate whenever he writes in something like this.
Yeah, I definitely like that too, just because, like, other books that I'm reading and stuff now, I'm starting to, like, guess stuff that there isn't a lot of, like, foreshadowing or hints at, purely because I think of, like, okay, there's some crazy out of the box shit in Red Rising 24/7 that I just wouldn't expect. So I kind of use that train of thought in, like, Stormlight especially. And Dante refuses to answer if I'm right or wrong on this thing, and he's just like, I think I'm right, and it's a huge implication for what's going to happen in the next book. But who knows? Who knows?
Yeah. See, you're better than I am. If I had a question like that, I would probably Google it.
I want to so bad, but like my favorite character in this series, my honor remains. Can't do that.
Wow. Pretending he has honor. I see how it is.
Yeah, I am lying through my teeth, but that's all right.
Several proctors approach Darrow other than just the Mars and the Apollo proctors and ask him about his goals. And Proctor Mars is the one who ends up choosing Darrow after discussing with advisors. And one of his advocates ends up being Lorne Au Arcos, the
The
third greatest
third?
man on Mars.
Hell yeah. I love Lorne. He's so silly in Golden Sun.
Yeah, he gets some really good characterization. He's just kind of like the badass, older, grizzled warrior, and I'm a sucker for characters like that.
I am too. I like that he's become more of like a philosopher now that he's done being the quote unquote rage knight, which that's just a hard title. Come on. Like,
It is.
ooh.
And despite being the Rage Knight, he seems like a fairly put together and calculating person. He's not what you would expect from someone who had the title of the Rage Knight.
Yeah, I definitely like meeting him after, Darrow and Nero and pretty much everyone that talks about Lorna Arcos. Like, he was considered the greatest Olympic knight for however long he was an Olympic knight. I think he was for like 40 years or
Yeah, that
so.
sounds about right.
Yeah, and like they just again and again, oh my god, he's such an amazing warrior. And you meet him and he's more of a philosopher at this point. Like obviously he could still piece some people up,
Hmm.
but there's a lot more like philosophy ingrained into him now, and I enjoy that. I think it's a better way than just kill people.
Yeah. Once again, I'm going to go back to a Game of Thrones comparison that Richard won't get because he hasn't watched it or read it. But uh,
Unbelievable.
Lorne Au Arcos is kind of like the Barristan Selmy of this universe. Like, member of the King's Guard who is old and but is still able to cut some people up. Um, we get a name for the Mars Proctor as well. His name is Fitchner,
We do. I
and
love Fitchner. He's a
I do
good
too.
character.
He's a really cool guy and very charismatic too. He's got a lot of
Oh,
charm.
indeed. I mean, he's an asshole about it, like the whole smacking Darrow and telling him he can't hit back. But
Hmm.
he's silly. He gives some people their like call signs, so he's kind of goaded for that.
Yeah, and I think that Fitchner is one of those characters who every time you see him doing something that's a little bit cruel or a little suspicious to one of the characters in the Institute, you know that it's kind of out of a place where he wants them to improve and do better. Or at least that's how I read it.
I'm with you on that. Actually, I would say a lot of what Fitchner does is like that tough love concept. It's a little too tough sometimes for some people, but I'd say his actions definitely impact like Darrow positively, Severo positively, maybe Cassius if I'm remembering right. But
Mm. Yeah, I definitely I like Fitchner's character a lot. He gets a lot of good moments in this book, and I think that he plays the role of mentor to Darrow very well. Um, Definitely, once Darrow gets into the Institute, Fitchner has to be a little more hands off. But up until that point when Darrow goes in, I think that the way that they interact with each other is tense, but also very understanding and collaborative.
yeah, they definitely get along a lot better than you'd expect based on like all of the other proctors that we meet just don't seem like they've got that like they understand how to truly be someone's mentor. Whereas Fitchner seems to actually lock it in and like he helps. I mean, we really only see him help the main characters, but we can assume that he helps other people too, I guess, maybe a little bit.
Yeah, you kind of get the idea that he's the only one of the proctors who actually gives a shit about his job.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's a better way of putting it than I put it. LMAO. LMAO.
No,
Lol.
I think you put it very well. But yeah, I think that Fitchner has got a little bit more of a stake in his little class than the other ones do, or at least cares a little bit more. The other proctors seem
Yeah.
like it's all just a game for their entertainment more than anything. And Fitchner doesn't give that impression as much.
Yeah, we do see him kind of fucking off a little bit here and there, but at the same time, come on, who doesn't fuck off at work here and there?
Exactly. For employment reasons, I am always 100% attentive at work and never would fuck off at
Me,
work at all.
yeah, me too, me too, me too.
And that is the end of chapter 17. And
Oh,
chapter 8.
uh,
Oh, is it?
real quick, I don't. It is, but I don't think we were talking about Fitchner so much we forgot. Darrow did get picked 10th overall. He was the first pick for House Mars, and he was the 10th pick overall out of 1,000 kids.
Out of 1,000. Goddamn. Okay, yeah, 10th is pretty good. I would have expected, honestly, no, I was about to say that I would have expected him to be higher, but since he's not from a significant family and is just got a lot of aptitude, I think that 10th overall is a pretty solid spot for him to be in, given his background.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, because you think about the top, obviously there's premiers who are like the ones who just gotta get put in. So like, people whose families are like Bologna level or higher, like they just kind of get pushed into the institute and their parents pick their house for them. We'll meet one of those next chapter. Those kids suck.
Yeah. And speaking of those kids, chapter 18, The Classmates, starts off with one of Darrow's classmates, Antonia, making a comment about how he's in line to be Primus, the house leader, which is denoted by a little bar next to his name on the leaderboard. Um, it's what you have to have three of those bars, which are some kind of like they're markers of exceptional actions or behavior, and that's how you become
Yeah,
a Primus.
yeah. I don't remember if it's 3 or 5 or 10. I feel like 5 might be it. Um,
Mm.
I'm not gonna lie. I'm kind of fumbling on this outline, but that's all right. Darrow
You're
gets
good.
it though for being a smart guy for only getting 1 point off on the test, and that is why he's in line to be Primus.
Yeah, so he's already out the gate with a little bit of an advantage on his fellow golds, which is pretty. That's a good sign for him. He's on his way to becoming influential in gold society, and just a few chapters ago, he was a little red who had no real agency or power in the world, and now he's on his way to becoming one of the most powerful people in the entire solar system.
Yeah, imagine if he became like the Reaper or something. That'd be kind of crazy.
Whoa. The Reaper with a sling blade that is shaped like whoa.
Whoa, that's crazy. Where'd that come from?
And we get another character introduction to Priam, a very spoiled premier, which is a gold whose house was selected by his family.
Yeah,
And
we find out.
this. Sorry,
Sorry,
go
I
ahead.
didn't put it in the outline. That's my bad. It was just in my head. We learned that Priam, on top of being a premier, like the reason he is a premier is because his mom, who's a senator, owns Phobos and Deimos, Mars's two moons. So that's why he's got like that highborn status.
Damn. Do we know is are these two moons like are people living there, or is it like a mining colony, or is it terraformed, or is it pretty much
Um,
just like his family is influential and we don't really need to dig deeper than that?
so we don't really see Deimos in the series, but we do see Phobos. It's very much like it's similar to how Luna is described, except obviously on a smaller scale because Luna's the capital or the
Hmm.
moon. But yeah, it's like a city almost built into Phobos. It's cool.
Okay, interesting. Um, I'm glad that you're here to give us these lore tidbits that I don't know about.
Maybe if you read the books, maybe just maybe we'd be in a better place. Who could say though?
Who could say? I mean, what do I need you for if I know everything?
Uh, mm, I'm just amazing in every way, shape, and form. So that's why you need me.
I'll get an AI Richard.
What? Don't do that.
I've got enough of your voice clips to create a probably a convincing AI of you.
I don't believe that's true, but all right.
I don't believe that's true either. I also don't know how to do that and don't
Yeah,
really have any
idiot,
interest in learning.
idiot, dumbass.
So Priam joins Mars along with Cassius, Severo. Oh my gosh, you're gonna flame me, Cassius. Sorry, Richard.
Cassius, my goat, my goat. You do not
Cassius,
disrespect him. You can
Severo.
disrespect. You can disrespect his younger brother Julian, though. Fuck Julian.
Yeah, well, Julian's a nice guy.
He is. Sure.
He's a nice guy.
Oh,
Yeah,
thank you for
Julian's.
fixing the twins thing, by the way.
Well, guys, when I was reading through the outline this morning, I was like, there's one thing I should change here. But no, yeah, we learned that Cassius and Julian are fraternal twins, so they're extra
Yeah.
close with each other, as twins
I,
tend to be.
I forgot the word last night, and I wrote they're twins, not identical, and I think I even wrote next to it I forgot the word.
You
So
you did
thank you for
indeed write
fixing.
that.
Yeah, I really shouldn't do these outlines at 3 in the morning, but it's just so silly,
Yeah, I feel like the outlines come out better when they're done at 3 in the morning.
right? I'm just a
It's
procrastinator at heart. What can I say?
some of us do our best work in the 11th hour
Or the third hour?
or the third hour. That's true. Julian really looks up to Cassius for approval, which is very typical of brothers, you know? I think that the fact that they're twins, Richard, there's a phenomenon with twins
Mm-hmm.
where one of them is normal and one of them is weird.
If I was a twin, I'd be the weird one.
Which one do you think is the weird twin?
I think the weird twin would have to be Julian because Cassius is just so goaded in every way, shape, and form. Like,
True.
if you look up the definition of goat in the dictionary, it's literally just a picture of Cassius Albolona.
Really, if I go on Urban Dictionary and just type in goat, it'll be a picture of him.
Sure, why not?
Yeah. Can you make edits to Urban Dictionary?
Probably. I could probably actually get that up there. I'd find a way.
You know those people who just like edit Wikipedia articles to false things for fun?
Oh my god, I love misinforming people. Holy shit, that's so
I
silly.
feel like we should start doing that. Just drop the whole podcasting bit and start spreading misinformation.
Honestly, I think we just start spreading misinformation on the podcast.
Yeah, did you see that there was a Bigfoot sighting in North Dakota?
Yeah, I actually did. Did you know that? No, no,
I'm
no,
afraid of what you were
no,
going to
no.
say just then.
Horrific. I'm not gonna misinform people. That would be evil and malicious.
Well, I'm gonna start doing Bigfoot sighting updates.
All right, you do that. I love how they're always blurry and just out of like a clear shot. So crazy.
We should do a whole podcast reviewing that show where they are trying to find Bigfoot. Finding Bigfoot, I think is what it's called. Holy shit.
Finding Bigfoot. Wow, that would be a crazy name for a show about looking for Bigfoot.
Uh,
Maybe even
That sh-
finding him.
that show was my jam when I was a kid. I would sit and watch and laugh at that show for
Yeah,
hours.
loser. I could tell you weren't a Ninjago kid.
I was a Ninjago kid.
Yeah, yeah. Were you? Were you really? Who's your
I
favorite
was.
character?
Lloyd the Green Ninja, obviously.
That's fair. I prefer Kai because he kind of like locked in after Lloyd became the Green Ninja, and he was like, "I gotta protect this kid."
I really
But
liked the
but to
blue.
each their own.
The blue ninja was always awesome too.
Oh my god, you mean Jay? Bro didn't even know his
Jay.
name.
Darrow just decides that he's gonna go to sleep at the end of this chapter. Much
Yeah.
like you did at 4 a.m. last night.
Yeah. Actually, that checks out. Just about.
Uh, and when Darrow wakes up, we're in chapter 19, the passage.
Yeah, he's getting bodied. He wakes up and there's four obsidians called crows, which are like they're a rank below the stained, which are like the most skilled obsidian warriors. So they're called crows. I love crows; they're pretty cool. And so these four crows are just beating the ever loving shit out of Darrow.
Yeah. So wait, I have a question.
Yes.
Um, the crows, they're above like regular obsidians.
Yeah, they're more like, I don't want to say an elite force of fighters because that's what the Stained are, but
I
they're stronger than normal obsidians. I can tell you that much.
okay, so maybe like the lieutenants to the.
They're like the Bronzies. How's that?
Okay, interesting, interesting. Um, I am hoping that at some point we get some deeper looks at the obsidians because I think that the whole idea behind them is really interesting, and I'd I'd like to see the
Bro's guessing
humanity.
about Morningstar happening. That's so crazy.
Yep. And these obsidians are dragging him through the halls, like fucking ragdolling him around with a bag thrown over his head.
Yeah,
Poor
and
Darrow, man.
this is where from his like POV, from his perspective, we're getting in his head, and he's like, "Don't they know I'm a gold? Like, what are these gory damn crows doing to me?" And he starts to get a little, yeah, a little racist against the Obsidians, and then he kind of catches himself, like, "Wait a minute, that's a pretty smart test because you're taking like pampered, spoiled brats and doing this to them, and they're gonna just kind of lose it based on how they're being treated, not on what's about to happen to them."
Yeah. And correct me if I'm wrong, but when Darrow first gets like scooped up by the obsidians, his first thought was kind of that he had been caught, right? He thought that they thought.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. He's like, "Oh my god, they know that I'm a red. They know that I'm a ruster. This is bad." But they don't. It's all part of the institute.
Yeah, which it's a really interesting test. The whole as we get further into the institute, there's so many tests that they give them that are just batshit crazy, and
Yeah.
I just find it to be really the way that they basically abuse their children in the process of making them peerless scarred. Not basically, they do abuse their children in the process of making them peerless scarred. It's no wonder that they're all such psychopaths when they grow up, because as teenagers, as children, they are physically, emotionally tortured and pitted against each other. Not exactly a
Well,
healthy way for someone to grow up.
yeah, you think about like, I mean, they're younger than we are, and they're going through this shit. They're like 18. I want to say everyone that's like the rough age for everyone in the institute. Like, it's like going to college, and this is their college, bro. They're just fucking. They're going through it. I don't know how else to explain it.
Yeah. I mean, as a current college student, I can say with absolute certainty, Darrow's experience is very different from my own. When they drag Darrow through the halls, they end up throwing him into a locked room with Julian, Cassius's younger brother, and Fitchner pops in, tells him that there's only one spot, and tosses a single House Mars ring on the ground, emblazoned with the Wolf of Mars and the Star of the Institute. This is some stressful shit right here.
Yeah, Julian starts kind of like begging Darrow. He's like, "Please, like, I'm a House Bologna. You can't do this to me. Like, I need that ring so bad." And Darrow goes dark. Like we said last week. He's a good man, but he wants to do bad things, and this is definitely a bad thing that he does.
Yeah,
He
and sorry, go
sorry.
ahead.
Oh, okay. So they start beating the shit out of each other. But Darrow is just stronger. He hits him really hard in the sternum, and nice loud crack, and Julian starts gasping for breath and falls over.
Yeah, I mean, that was a pretty big punch from Darrow in order to kill this guy.
Yeah, but hey, he got the ring. He got the drip. All right, that's why it's important.
Yeah, got the one ring to rule them all.
That kind of is actually what it is, believe it or not.
And I really like the sort of imagery that they have, that this signet ring has the Wolf of Mars and the Star of the Institute on it. Um, I think that the different symbols that they choose to represent the houses and everything I'm a big sucker for those kinds of details, so I like the heraldry that they include here.
Oh yeah, it's amazing. It definitely creates some interesting like symbolism clashes too, like later in the series. It's just an interesting thing. I mean, I can't go too deep into detail, of course, but that's all right.
Yeah, there's a lot of it changes a little bit as the series goes on and things take on new meanings. And I mean, I'm starting to see that a little bit just as far as I am, and I'm not very far in the series. So, um, got a lot to look forward to with that if you're a heraldry and symbolism nerd like me. And Darrow, he's taken his first life. A piece of him is dead, a little bit of his innocence. Not that he really had much left. I mean,
Yeah, I mean,
he's been
I
through
guess I shouldn't have said he's taken his first life because like he did kill EO technically, but
I
this is the
I don't
first time
know.
he's directly killed someone of his own accord.
Yeah, I wouldn't count EO as the first life he's taken just because it was more of she was going to die anyways and he was just kind of putting her out of her misery, and it was a mercy kill. I mean
Yeah.
that would definitely, I feel like that was the more impactful death for him. And then Julian's death is I don't want to say it's less impactful because it has some pretty big story implications.
Yeah, I
But
would say it's less impactful on his character alone, Julian's death, that is. Whereas Eos was like, obviously, I mean, he, book six, he still has his moments where he's like, yap, 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 EO, blah, 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 blah. I don't care. Mustang and Darrow belong together, all right?
yeah, I'm very surprised that with how Julian is smaller in stature and not super strong, that the Bolognas even sent him to the Institute, let alone allowed this to happen. It feels like an influential family like that would kind of pay their way through having him get through the Institute or just keep him at
Yeah.
home. I don't know. What
I
are your thoughts on that?
I think it's crazy that they sent him in, given that he also like they stated it once, like at one point in the book, he also didn't score well on the tests. So it's not just even that he's not the strongest; he's also just not the smartest either. So
Yeah.
he's kind of mid, and Darrow punishes him for that.
Yeah, I mean, that's just the way this society is set up. We've said it a few times that the strong are the ones who come out on top, and the weak are the ones who suffer, and or even just the average people are the ones who suffer. And not a great system. It's a very cutthroat, dog eat dog, and I think that Darrow is sort of maybe buying into it a little bit at this point with his newfound power.
Oh, he 100% buys into it. His one of the last things he's like his internal monologue is about before he kills Julian is that he literally calls himself Darwin's scythe. Like he's really buying into it this early. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, the whole like just calling yourself that is very, it's a little scary. It's got scary implications for Darrow, and it makes me think that at some point he's going to have a moment where he feels more like a gold than he does like a red now. And I mean, especially in his soul, physically, of course, he is full on gold, but I think that he is going to have a moment where his philosophy is going to be challenged, and it'll be a little scary for us as viewers.
Yeah, I mean, Darrow, I love him. He does awesome stuff all the time. Like he's metal as fuck sometimes. But holy shit, as like an actual person, he is terrifying. Like,
Yeah,
ugh. The Reaper,
and
Cassius, on the other hand, would. That's all I can say.
Cassius, yeah, Cassius is he's something else. He really is. He's
He's on the hear
probably
me out list, all right?
he might be the greatest single rival to Darrow physically, I would say.
I I would agree with that actually. At least there's maybe one better rival later, but
Hmm.
that's whatever.
Yeah,
And then
but
tactically, it's someone else. It's the the bad guy in this book. Can't say his name, but you know who I'm talking about.
I do know who you're talking about. Which I I said something earlier that I wanted to connect to it just now, but that would be a major spoiler. Um,
Mm.
we can talk about it off air after.
Oh,
But
of course.
anyways, that's the end of part two. Which this is a fairly short set of chapters, or not necessarily page wise, but it was a fairly short set of chapters, and like what happened in it. It was kind of a lot of setup and basically just getting us ready to see Darrow in the Institute and setting up some tensions going forward and establishing some characters, which is interesting that we're kind of in still the setup phase. We're 19 chapters in and we're just getting done with the setup and now we're really getting into the meat of the story. I would say.
Yeah. The good thing though, I'll say about that, like yes, it's a long, very long setup, but I would consider it to be very worth it afterwards. Like the later chapters go kind of crazy, and Aaron, I think you can agree with me on that one.
I Yeah, I would 100% agree. The later chapters, I mean, I think I read the first half of this book in maybe the course of a couple of weeks, and then I got to the second half of the book and I was done with it in about 2 or 3 days.
Yeah, like that's crazy. And I love this book purely because it ramps up. It's not as bad as what they call the Sanderland in all of the Brandon Sanderson books. That's where
Hmm.
like all of the really crazy awesome stuff happens in the last like 150 200 pages. And it's peak, don't get me wrong, but I would prefer it to be like spread out a bit more, and that's why I like the way Pierce does it. It's not
Yeah,
insanity.
yeah. Sometimes the insanity is really cool, but at the same time, I think that having a little bit more of a slow burn is also really rewarding in storytelling.
Yeah. I mean, obviously depends on what you're into. I'm with you though. The slow burn is a lot better for me at least.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm a big lover of political drama and things of that nature, so the slow burn always is entertaining to me, but I mean, who doesn't love some good fast paced action sequences where the character needs to think on their feet and really get shit done?
Yeah. I mean, Darrow does lock it in a lot of those scenes. I'm not gonna lie, and that's why I love him. It's also interesting though, because I mean, Darrow does lose a good amount too. Like, I don't know. It creates a very interesting. It's very well done because you won't see it coming all the time. Sometimes you will, but there are other things that happen that you're just kind of dumbfounded by, and that's fun. I like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of great twists and turns, and I'm looking forward to talking about them because now it feels like we're done with the setup of this, and we can. The Institute is going to be just absolute batshit crazy. I've got so much to say about when they're in the Institute.
I've got so much to say about Golden Sun, the gala. You know, bro, I love the gala.
Hmm.
That
Yeah,
is in my top 5 chapters of all time.
we could probably do a whole episode just on the gala.
Dude, I could do a whole episode just on the fucking ending of Golden Sun. Are you kidding me? That oh my god. You wouldn't
I
know though.
wish I could relate, but haven't seen it or haven't read it.
I haven't seen it. Well, technically I guess you haven't seen it with
Yeah,
cuz you got to see to read, bro.
I do. Not all of us are audiobook listeners.
Yeah, I love being an audiobook listener cuz the narrator is so goated.
I do need to invest in those audiobooks or just audiobooks in general because there are so many times when I'm sitting around like, oh, I wish I had an audiobook to listen to.
Really?
Yeah, I do. Maybe I'll get a Audible subscription or something, but do I really
That's what
want to
I
add another
have.
subscription to my life?
I have an Audible subscription and it's fire.
Yeah, could be worth it. Could be worth it. Um, any final thoughts on the end of part two or anything that we've talked about today?
Obviously, I think that what just happened, chapter 19, the passage, super important for the rest of the book because obviously Darrow and Cassius, they're broskies. They're close, you know? And that's hopefully nothing will ever come of Darrow killing Cassius's brother. No one would ever find anything out about that, right?
No, it's all highly confidential information, and there will definitely not be conflict in the future.
Yeah, and it definitely isn't going to create a distrusting environment in general for House Mars.
Yeah.
Ooh, wait a minute. It
Ooh.
might. It might.
Yeah. It's really sad the way that the Gold's just so division, and damn. They're such assholes. I can't stand them.
Yeah, and then you think about Darrow as the king of the hill at the end. I love Darrow.
Yeah.
My Pookie.
And so I did mention that I was going to have feedback for this week. I'm pushing that to next week so that we can have like a longer feedback section. Um,
That's smart.
yeah. So I do believe that we can let people know how to get a hold of us, Richard. Do you want to
Oh,
tell people how they should, unless you had any final thoughts?
no, that's all I had. Do you have any final thoughts?
No, I think that I already yapped too much today.
That's fair. That is fair. You do yap a lot, honestly. Someone
I
needs to
do.
stop you.
Someone should.
That's crazy. But yeah. So there's a few ways you can get in touch with us. We have our email, radioactive at thelorehounds.com. We also have a channel set up for radioactive ramblings in the Discord server for the Lorehounds. You could send us a message, chat about the show, tell Chase that he needs to read the book so he can join in on the podcast some more. But whatever. Whatever. That's neither here nor there.
Yeah, what's
Uh
crazy is I literally live with the guy and could lend him the book. He still
and
doesn't
he
want to do
and
it.
he texts me when we're recording and says shut up. That's crazy. Like that's crazy. Um we also have a contact form, or you could leave us a voicemail at thelorehounds.com. We have a Twitter or an X account, whatever you want to call it, at Radioactive 141. And we'd appreciate a rating on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or whatever else you could possibly be listening to this on. It helps other listeners like you find us.
And all of that information that Richard just mentioned is going to be in the show notes. So if you are looking for how to contact us, there always just check the show notes of our podcast. Before we let you go, I also wanted to say thank you so much for tuning in today. I This has been such an exciting podcast to do. I've been having a lot of fun with it. I think Richard, you've I'm getting the impression you've also been having fun with this one.
I like
Um,
yapping about Red Rising just a little bit, all right?
just a little bit.
Yeah.
Um, but before we let you guys go, there is not only Ramblers Rising and Radioactive Ramblings as a whole, we are a part of a greater group of affiliates called the Barovian Broadcasting Network. And this is spearheaded by the Lorehounds. The Lorehounds is our parent podcast. They were kind enough to give us this platform and help us get things started when we started doing Fallout. Right now, they've got some coverage going on for um, Agatha all along. They just wrapped up Rings of Power, and they're also doing some periodical check-ins with the Penguins. So go give them a little listen, and I they're fantastic. They're really entertaining. So go give them a listen. And there's also many other affiliate podcasts like ourselves. Got Rings and Rituals, who cover the Rings of Power through the lens of everyday rituals. And I know that they've got some things cooking now that the second season of Rings of Power is over. They'll be revisiting that series at some point in the future. We'll Shift Dust, which is spearheaded by the lorehound Alicia, is currently on a little bit of a hiatus, I believe, but they're going to be coming back as soon as Silo Season 2 premieres, which is very soon. Properly Howard Movie Review, where Anthony and Steve, a academic and a stand-up comic, rate movies on a scale of better or worse than a Ron Howard film. They are currently on a season break, but they released a surprise Penguin review. Seems like everyone's talking about the Penguin right now, and I can't blame them because that show is fantastic.
I
And
I haven't
Have you
watched The
watched it?
Penguin. I haven't watched The Penguin. I don't have HBO, bro. You gotta
Oh my
send me your
god.
password.
I'll send you my login after we're done here.
Yeah, you
And
better.
the Star Wars Canon Timeline podcast, which is also spearheaded by Alicia, and it's really a fantastic podcast if you are a lover of Star Wars lore and want to know a little bit more. And last but certainly not least is the newest affiliate, Never Mind the Music, which they're really chugging along in their first season. The editing is fantastic. The hosts are fantastic. Mark and Nicole, they're super entertaining. So go check out that new podcast. And they've got, I believe, 8 episodes out now. Just super entertaining, super accessible, even if you don't know a lot about music like myself. So go give all of those podcasts a listen. There's going to be links to all of these shows in our show notes. And thank you guys so much for listening today. And we will see you all in the next episode.